She was born in a narrow house at the edge of a fading Midwestern town where winter stayed longer than it should, and hope often left early. The walls of that house had heard prayers whispered at night and arguments shouted in the morning. The woman who would one day stand unbroken first learned strength by watching her mother wake before dawn to tie her hair back and leave for a double shift at the nursing home. The town called it a place of honest work, but honest work did not always pay honest wages. Still, the lights stayed on most months, and dinner showed up on the table even if it was simple and quiet. Her name was Claire. She grew up knowing the sound of trucks passing by on the highway and the feeling of hand-me-down coats that never quite fit. School was a place of mixed emotions. She loved books because they offered escape. She hated silence because silence at home usually meant bills spread across the kitchen table. Her father left when she was young, not with cruelty, but with exhaustion. He promised to call, and sometimes he did. Mostly he did not. Claire learned early that promises could be real and still disappear. By the time she reached her teenage years, the town felt too small for her questions. She worked evenings at a grocery store bagging items for people who barely noticed her. She watched couples argue over cereal choices and old men count coins with shaking hands. Every face told a story, and Claire absorbed them all. She did not know it yet, but this was her education. Her mother fell ill during Claire's senior year. Nothing dramatic at first, just fatigue and missed days. Then tests and more tests. The word cancer arrived quietly, but it filled the room like smoke. Claire became both daughter and caretaker. She learned how to balance homework with hospital visits. She learned how to smile when doctors walked in and how to cry silently in bathroom stalls. College acceptance letters arrived and sat unopened for days. The future felt selfish when the present demanded everything. Her mother passed away on a rainy afternoon, the kind of rain that soaked into shoes and stayed there. Claire held her hand and felt the warmth leave slowly. There were no speeches, no dramatic music, just the steady sound of rain against glass and a heart breaking without making noise. After the funeral, Claire returned to the house and sat on the floor surrounded by boxes of memories. She understood then that strength was not loud. Strength was waking up the next morning anyway. She left town soon after. She chose a city that scared her a little, a place with crowded streets and endless noise. She rented a small apartment with thin walls and worked wherever she could. She cleaned offices at night and served coffee during the day. Sleep became a luxury she could not afford. But exhaustion felt better than emptiness. The city did not welcome her with open arms. It tested her constantly. She was underestimated in meetings, overlooked in rooms, told she was too quiet or too emotional depending on who spoke. She learned how to speak without raising her voice. She learned how to look people in the eye even when her hands trembled. Years passed. She found work in community outreach helping families who lived paycheck to paycheck. She recognized their fear because it lived in her chest too. She fought for grants and resources. She filled out forms that no one wanted to read. She sat with mothers who felt invisible and listened to stories that mirrored her own. She did not save the world. She showed up, and sometimes that was enough. One winter night, she walked home after a long day. Snow fell softly, and the city lights reflected on wet pavement. She passed a woman sitting against a closed storefront holding a sign asking for help. Claire stopped. Not because she felt heroic, but because she remembered her mother counting dollars at the kitchen table. She sat down beside the woman and listened. That night changed something in her. She realized that courage was contagious. She began organizing small gatherings. Conversations at first, then meetings, then movements. She helped create safe spaces where voices were heard, without judgment. The work was slow and often thankless. Funding was uncertain. Critics were loud. But Claire kept going. She carried her mother's memory like a compass. There were setbacks. A project failed. A partnership collapsed. She lost an apartment and had to start over again. Each time, she felt the familiar pull of doubt. Each time, she stood back up. Not because she believed she was unbreakable, but because she knew what breaking felt like and she refused to live there again. As years went on, people began to recognize her name, not as a celebrity, but as a constant. Someone who stayed when others left. Someone who did not turn away. She spoke at city halls and small churches. She told stories without embellishment. She reminded people that policy had faces and pain had names. One evening, she returned to her hometown for the first time in decades. The house was gone, replaced by a parking lot. She stood there and felt grief rise again. But it did not crush her. It stood beside her like an old friend. She understood then that bravery was not the absence of fear. It was carrying fear and still choosing to act. Claire never called herself a hero. She paid her bills late sometimes. She cried alone in her car. She doubted herself often. But she kept moving forward. She built a life rooted in purpose, not perfection. In a world that tried to harden her, she chose compassion. In a system that often failed, she chose persistence. Her story was not clean or simple. It was layered with loss and resilience. It was American in its struggle and universal in its heart. She stood one morning at a community center watching children laugh as they painted a mural. Sunlight poured through dusty windows. Claire smiled, not because everything was fixed, but because something was alive. Hope was alive. And so was she.